Coming up on today's episode of Paris Sport Nation, the 2024 Paralympic Games were the most watched games in history. We have all the stats from the Paris Paralympics. Nathan and I are going to break it down. Let's get started.
Welcome to Paris Sport Nation with Alex Smyth and Nathan Clement.
Welcome into Paris Sport Nation. I'm your host, Alex Smyth, and joined by co-host Nathan Clement. Nathan, before we get started in breaking down some numbers from an impressive Paris Paralympics, you're in the middle of a fight with some birds. What's going on with you and the birds and your balcony and the other bees happening in Vancouver?
Yes, so right now I've been in a 6-month war against some pigeons in my area. So I have previously moved into this suite, and on the show or listening, it's been a little bit of a transformation in the place, moving into a new area of the city. I've had some unwanted tenants in my place, some squatters, as one may say, as these pigeons that love to fly onto my balcony, especially when I'm recording episodes of Paris Sport Nation. And for the avid viewer, the avid listener, you may see moments where there's a little pause in what I'm saying. That is usually because there's a pigeon fight going outside of my window. But mostly what has been going on is the pigeons are constantly decorating my balcony, and it's created a lot of problems and a lot of issues. I've tried putting up owls to scare them away, but that has not done the trick yet. But speaking to you off mic and off camera, you've been telling me that you've had some bird experiences too, Alex.
Yes, you mentioning that you put up pictures of owls certainly recalls a memory I had many years ago, probably around like 7-8 years ago, when I was at home in my parents' basement working in the office. All I would hear during the springtime was a tink, 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 tink every couple seconds. Tink, tink. What it was, there was a male cardinal right outside the basement window. There was a branch of a small tree in our backyard, and he would see his reflection, think it's another male cardinal, and then go to war with our window, thinking he was besting the toughest male cardinal rival he's ever come across. The problem was, it was so distracting, I couldn't record anything because it was constantly in the background. It was so loud. I tried, I didn't do the owl route. I tried even more intense. I found the most aggressive looking picture of a wolf that I could find, slapped it right on the window. It did not deter him. He was literally pecking at the wolf because he thought it was, the reflection hit it just enough that he thought he could still win the day. So it took a long time before the cardinal finally went somewhere else. I never got rid of him myself, so I feel your plight. I feel your pain when it comes to fighting the birds. It's unfortunately, it's a battle I don't think either of us are really winning.
No, I think this is a losing battle, and I'm going to be away for a good solid several weeks, so I have a feeling the pigeons are going to really use that time to take advantage. But I could go the wolf route, but I don't think a wolf high up in an apartment complex in Vancouver is going to make much logical sense. But it could be a move in the future, but it sounds like you were going up against the Superman of Cardinals.
Yeah, well, he was not going to be denied. And speaking of not being denied, I think the numbers don't lie when it comes to the Paris Paralympics. Fans and athletes were not going to be denied because this was the most watched Paralympics in history. You and I reacted kind of in the unwinding of the games themselves and talked about how, we felt this was one of the best games ever. Well, the numbers back that up. 763.3 million hours of dedicated live coverage was consumed by viewers worldwide. It's not a direct comparison to say, it's 763 million people, but it's the best you can really use to translate. So for argument's sake, we can kind of say, okay, over 700 million people took in the Paris Paralympic Games. In comparison, that is 83% more than the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games. That was the COVID Summer Games. But this is one thing I first off, before we get into these numbers and all the others, let's take that top line number, 763.3 million. Nathan, what are your thoughts on that number?
It's crazy to think that when you look at that 763 million, that is just below 10% of the world population, which is just a astonishing number when you really think about just how far these broadcasts went out and how many countries are watching or are viewing sporting events like this. And you're really starting to see that upward trajectory from games like in Tokyo in 2021 or Rio de Janeiro in 2016, and just that upward momentum. But for you, Alex, I was in the village in Paris and we felt the energy from Canada. What was it like for you being able to watch the Paralympics back in August and September?
Yeah, so for me, honestly, it wasn't, I didn't get much chance to enjoy it because I was so busy grinding and trying to book guests for now what was when I was working on it now with Dave Brown. I was following the games very closely, but it was very much from that professional lens of following all the Canadian stars and athletes, who was doing well, who was winning medals. I was following your journey there as well, and just keeping track and just reaching out and constantly like, oh, can we get them? This is a great story here. Oh, they captured a medal here, or oh, they came up short. Okay, maybe we can get a reaction from this athlete, that athlete, and so it was a very busy time for me, but I still felt really blessed because it was just the level of coverage, the amount of coverage available was unlike anything that I had seen or experienced when it came to the Paralympics previously. And that is part of the statistics we're going to run through. This was the most covered games. This was obviously the most watched games, but it was the most covered games. And in terms of people tuning in live, people having a reaction, people following along the journey, this was they had more live audiences and tuning in and watching the games. There was 40% more than Tokyo and 117% compared to Rio in 2016. One thing I should say for added context, in case some of the viewers are wondering, you don't really compare the summer games to the winter games because they're so different. There's 22 summer sports versus 6. So the numbers, that's why you get it compared to Tokyo and Rio, the last 2 summer games that we've had. Nathan, this is a question that when we first saw these numbers, you kind of posed this to me and I had to sit with this, but I'm going to ask you first and then you can throw it back at me. Come LA 2028, the next Summer Paralympics, do you think that 763 million is going to be either be or surpass 1 billion viewers in the 2028 Paralympic Games?
I think it is going to be a resounding yes. I really think the momentum that has grown and has really become with the Paralympic movement, where we talk about what the viewership was in Rio, what the viewership was in Tokyo, and because Tokyo was during the COVID games, it didn't get as much viewership as probably it could have with people in attendance and everything going on there. But you had that upwards trajectory that's been happening now for plenty of years and plenty of game cycles, where with LA, it being in Hollywood, it being in the mecca of media and television and film, I think the Paralympics are going to get over 1 billion viewers. You have countries that are really expanding. India is growing their Paralympic programs. So many places in China are really getting that access, and a lot of the major media markets and viewerships are expanding, and they're getting TV deals and they're getting TV opportunities. And I even know in Canada, there's going to hopefully be a lot more coverage here. And I really think that 1 billion is going to be surpassed. What do you think?
I 100% agree. It took me a bit of time to come around on it. Originally, my gut instinct was, no, that's too many people. You're not going to reach it. But like seeing these numbers, seeing the breakdown, seeing the fact that there was a 40% jump from Tokyo, 116% jump from Rio, and thinking it's like we're already at 763 million. It's like it's not that far off. And the fact that you have another 4 years to grow the excitement, the interest, the awareness around the Paralympic movement. And as you mentioned as well, it's going to be in LA. Like everything is going to be bigger, brighter, better than it was before because they're going to put on the show. Even when they were doing that, like the end of Paris, like the transition over to like handing things over and teasing for LA, it got people excited and talking then and during the closing ceremony. So I fully expect we're going to be seeing next time we do a review of these numbers for the LA Games, it's going to be over 1 billion people for sure. Now, let's break down some of these other statistics. So, for the first time in Paralympic history, every single Paralympic sport had some form of live coverage during the Games. How big of an impact will the fact that now every single Paralympic sport has live coverage attached to it, Nathan? Because, you know, we're in the year now 2025. This was 2024. It seemed ridiculous. It took so long to literally have the Paralympics have live broadcast for all the sports that are competing at the biggest game in the Paralympic and disability-related sport competition in the world. But it's now here. So how big of an impact will that have going forward?
It's everything. And I even want to take a step back for a second and even acknowledge that at first that wasn't going to be the case in Paris. And it took people like Alison Lang, Heidi Peters, and so many members of the Canadian women's sitting volleyball team to stand up and say, hey, this is not right, because at first they weren't going to live stream a lot of the sitting volleyball games. And it's taken a lot of work from leaders, from advocates like those people in the Paralympic sport community that has made it possible that every sport now has viewership and airtime. And as we continue on in this digital age and really growing sport and growing the personality of all, and having that canvas to show the personality of all these athletes, now there's a draw to see these people compete because you can see what their training's like on that everyday basis, and it's just going to continue to expand and grow. But just having that access and having that ability to see and to view, and I even know for myself, when I raced in Paris, I had friends and family up at 2 a.m. in Pacific time watching my race and watching my event, and that live coverage is so special because you're there in the moment. It's like for you and I, Alex, it's like any sporting event. You and I both probably remember it's when you had to watch hockey games that were behind a pay-per-view wall or different events like that. It sucked and it took the atmosphere out of it. But now that you're able to watch, you're able to be there in the moment, you're able to be present and experience and celebrate these athletes in that real-time moment. Is there, now I'm going to throw this to you, is there a event that you saw or in Paris that you wish you were in the venue for, would have been able to see live?
So there are a few that definitely stand out to me, and ones that I've been, I think of when I quickly think of the Paris Games. Obviously, just based on our connection, I would have loved to have been there to see you claim silver. Like that would have been amazing to be able to witness that. Seeing Greg Stewart come out of retirement, friend of the show, recapture gold a second time, that would have been a lot of fun. But the number one moment, and the one I'm always going to remember is Brianna Hennessy getting the medal in the kayaking there, and just the emotion there. I think that would have been a really special moment to have been there, to be able to witness it live. It was special seeing it remotely, but I'm sure even being there live, the emotion would have been so much more. So that would have been my one moment. If I could have been there live to witness that, I would have. Speaking of the individual sports, though, it was really interesting because the IPC broke down kind of the number of hours and the most airtime by sport. Unsurprisingly, para-athletics dominated. They led the way, over 1,600 hours. That's in part because there's so many classifications, so many different sports within the umbrella of para-athletics. But some of the ones that followed were a bit more surprising. Para-swimming was next up. Again, another one that has a lot of different races, a lot of different classifications. 860 hours for para-swimming. Then I was very surprised about this one, Nathan. Para-table tennis with 615 hours of coverage, followed by wheelchair tennis with 498 and wheelchair basketball with 434. Which sport do you think is the biggest winner of the Paris Paralympics?
I think every sport really is, but I know that's not the answer you want, and what the not the answer what the viewers want.
That's a cop-out, Nathan. I want a real answer.
I know I'm deflecting like a politician right now, but I really think there's, on a Canadian standpoint, I will say wheelchair basketball was the real winner. Just how the runs of the men's and women's team galvanized the Paralympic movement, brought these programs that have always had that success, had that legacy, go on that another run, and especially having friend of the program and all-time great Patrick Anderson go on one more magical run at the games was really beautiful to see. And I think that was a big winner from a Canadian perspective. But I also want to throw in there, and I cannot completely forget about blind soccer and just the viewership and how that captured France, especially having penalty kicks in the gold medal game between them and Argentina, and France winning underneath the Champs-Elysees, France winning underneath the Eiffel Tower, and just how beautiful that was to have that on live TV, and just to hear the emotion and hear the passion from the French when they won gold in football was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. From like that obviously was a great moment and a capstone to the games, but I think just based on this numbers, I gotta go para table tennis. Like it's always been one of those sports. Part of it may be it's the national bias that Canada's never really had a large presence in para table tennis, but it's very much an international global game in the fact that you had 615 hours dedicated to it. That was the biggest surprise, because unlike swimming, where you have all these different classifications, distances, strokes, it can really multiply the competition field, the amount of coverage needed. But for this, it's just because there is such an interest in that sport. I think that's why that one is the big winner for me, and I think that can help grow the sport and the Paralympic movement in some of these countries who don't have as much of a presence on a Paralympic level. But it's like, table tennis is a hugely popular sport across the globe. And so to have this level of coverage and maybe this level of interest may spur something to have more development in that sport going forward. So for me, table tennis is the big winner. Now, taking away the live coverage aspect, we move over to the online side of things, and there were more than 1 billion internet searches during the games on the Paralympics. That is, as you had mentioned before when we were talking about viewership numbers, that is 1/8 of the global population searching about the Paralympics, trying to find some information during the games. Does this mean that the parasport movement has finally reached a true level of awareness globally, or is there still more work that needs to be done?
There's always more work that needs to be done, but to take a step back and to really look at this at on a wider scope, this is an incredible step forward. Just for us to get to 1 billion, you and I have been involved in parasport for decades, covering and just speaking about our world, and to see where it's gone from even back in the day. We're coming up with Milano Cortina next year. That's 50 years since the first Winter Games, and about 66 since the first Paralympics. And now we're at a point where we're getting 1 billion eyeballs on sporting events, where we're getting 1 billion people looking up these different events, and it's just progressing. It's growing quickly with that advantage of social media, and it's just continuing to evolve. And of course, there's things that need to improve and things that need to get better, but we're on a great pathway forward. And each games, it feels like we're taking a next step. But for you, Alex, is there anything that you hope to be seen or viewed more from the Paralympics?
Yeah, so there are a couple things that I think can be done on a broader or more robust scale going forward, and leading into, like, maybe Milano Cortina is probably a bit too tight to like kind of establish this, but definitely for LA 28, I think having a robust online strategy and full, like, wall-to-wall coverage of every single match, every single game, every single competition. There should be a camera feed you can click on, you can follow, you can get access to in at least a dozen or so languages. I would love to see it that you go to, like, the IPC website, the International Paralympic Committee website, or the national sport organizations or national Paralympic sites, and you can literally click on every single sport, every single competition, and you can choose whether you want it in English, you want it in French, you want it in Mandarin, you want it in Spanish, like what have you. And being able to just have the audio feed switched over. And part of that requires global collaboration. That requires a true partnership between not only the IPC, but the different, like, rights holders, the broadcasters, things like that, all coming together. That would be my goal for going forward, to continue to grow it, because the future's online. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, so the easier access you have it, that you can literally get it anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection or access to the internet, I think that should be the ultimate goal. What about you, Nathan? There was a lot there in that one. That was a very bold and hopeful idea of what I want going forward. But what do you want from the Paralympics going forward?
I like where you're going with that, with the just variety and the access of languages. I think in a perfect world, that kind of unity and that collaboration from different networks would be absolutely incredible. And I hope that can happen in the future. But you even see it a little bit now of how different networks work with the Olympic Broadcasting System, or OBS for short, and coming up with different feeds, but just having that kind of language access. But what I would love to see more is interviews with the athletes, a real dive, a real opportunity to see the personality, see the people, because the big thing that I find with Paralympic sport, and I'm going to kind of dive into the inspiration porn side of sport media for a second, is you and I, we've been in this world for a long time, and we know how exhausting, and many of our viewers probably feel that same way, of hearing about, oh, how inspirational that athlete is, or how remarkable he is, or she is, by the fact that they put their socks on with one arm, or they can put their socks on with the visual impairment. It's very dehumanizing. So coming forward and really just sharing and celebrating the heart, the effort that goes in there, really highlighting the personality, I think is a bigger thing that we can just continue to do. Like the Paralympics, their Instagram, their social media, their TikTok is amazing at poking humor, having fun, showing that lighter side. And we have so many amazing personalities and people who are showing that lighter side, but also showing that grit and tenacity and what it means to be a high-performing professional athlete. And that's how parasport has to be viewed. It's professional sport for people with a physical disability. That's what it is at the end of the day. And I feel with the media, with the storytelling, it's showing that lens, but also not being afraid to show the stories, but not in a way of, hey, it's great that they finished. No, they are here to perform. They are here to excel. And we are here to lay everything on the line every time we step up on the blocks or we get in our chair to go out and do what we want to do. And just really celebrating the high performance aspect of parasport, I think is really going to help us go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are tons of people who are working towards that, even friends of the show, Harder Than You Think, doing that work and that behind the scenes kind of storytelling in preparation for Milano Cortina and beyond. I definitely could see LA 2028 really embracing that social media side of things. One last thing, speaking of the behind the scenes, the big hit from the Paris Games was the chocolate croissants. All the athletes were talking about it. You had talked about it before. What do you think is going to be the staple or the most talked about or celebrated food in LA 2028?
I want to get away from the food for 1 second. I want to have the harmonica players for the LA Kings doing the anthems at the LA 2028 Games. I think that would be amazing. But for food, that gets tricky because you're in LA. Mm-hmm. You got American style food. I think if we can get a In-N-Out burger in the Village, I think that would be the perfect world, because I've seen what McDonald's does to athletes in a Village.
Yep.
And I know how dangerous, but also great that is too, once you're done competing, in air quotations. But I think if we're able to get an American food chain in there, that could be dangerous, but amazing at the same time.
Why stop at one? Why don't you get all of them? Why don't you get a collaboration? It's like, hey, every single food chain, you all get a booth in the athlete village. I mean, I don't think anyone... don't weigh the athletes if that is the case. I, though, think...
Just open up a mall.
Exactly. There's plenty of them around. I think, though, it's going to be a taco. LA tacos, it's a match made in heaven. I think maybe there's like a food truck or something in there. I think a taco is going to be the most praised food item come LA 2028. But Nathan, we've run out of time. We broke down all the numbers. We've talked all about the Paris Paralympics. I think it's time to finally close the book on Paris for now, as we start to look ahead towards Milano Cortina and LA. And so with that, that's it for today's program. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Parasport Nation. Like and subscribe to the channel to follow us now.